It's been 25 years since TWA Flight 800 tragically exploded off the coast of Long Island, killing everyone.
On the night of July 17, 1996, off the coast of Long Island, shrouded in darkness, the signal of TWA Flight 800 suddenly vanished from the radar screen. Just seconds before, numerous eyewitnesses insisted they had seen a streak of light shoot up into the sky and then erupt into two massive fireballs, tearing apart the stillness of the summer night. On the emergency radio frequency, the voices of pilots, air traffic controllers, and nearby vessels came through in rapid succession, yet no one understood what had just happened in the mere 12 minutes after takeoff. What was that streak of light, and why did a Boeing 747 disintegrate so quickly that no one had time to react? Today, join MindGap as we expose the truths behind the Boeing 747 tragedy. And if you find our content compelling, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our latest updates. Under the pale glow of JFK Airport's lights, the Boeing 747, carrying 230 passengers, left the runway on a summer night in 1996, heading straight for Paris like a promise of uninterrupted peace. The night was dark, the weather calm, a gentle breeze brushed against the massive wings, and there seemed to be no sign of anything unusual. The flight, as planned, unfolded smoothly down to the smallest detail. Yet, less than 12 minutes after leaving the ground, a shocking event was about to shatter every assumption of normalcy. Everything was perfectly calm until the very last moment before it all plunged into terrifying silence. The unease deepened when radar data and air traffic control systems recorded only one strange detail. The plane suddenly vanished. No warning, no loud explosion, just gone from the screen. The contradiction between the witnesses' perception, a blinding light, a sensation of a launch, and the cold technical data that showed instant silence created a tension that could not be ignored. Clearly, even as the United States braced itself against terrorism, no one could imagine that a modern 747 could disappear like this, without warning, without alarms, leaving only a void on the radar and a brief flash in the night sky. The bizarre and almost unthinkable nature of it made it impossible to believe this was just a routine accident, raising the possibility of something far more dangerous that had never been uncovered. From here, curiosity evolved beyond just a plane crash story, becoming a dark layer of mystery that made viewers wonder, what exactly happened in those final seconds? To truly understand the tragedy of TWA Flight 800, we must rewind to what seemed like an ordinary moment, the 12th minute after takeoff, when frantic radio alerts erupted, when the night sky was torn apart by two massive fireballs, and when the radar data turned into a dense, blinding blank. What could have caused a Boeing 747, flying in calm weather in a country that was supposedly safe like the United States, to disintegrate so horrifically in just a few short minutes? This is the question every MindGap viewer is asking, investigating together, and, if lucky, uncovering the hidden part of the mystery. In the next part, we will dig into every detail of those final minutes, from the panicked radio calls to air traffic control's reaction to the conflicting radar data and the most prominent early theories proposed. All will reveal the pieces needed for viewers to truly grasp that this was not just an ordinary aviation incident, but one of the most chilling mysteries the American skies have ever recorded. In the brief minutes after the Boeing 747 left the JFK runway and headed toward Paris, everything seemed to be going exactly as planned. The aircraft steadily climbing, gliding over the calm waters off Long Island, carrying 230 lives through a peaceful summer sky. But moments later came a breathless chain of events, starting in that short 12th minute when all normalcy vanished in an instant. According to official NTSB documents and recorded data, at about 8:31 p.m. EDT, Precisely 12 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft, flying at an altitude of roughly 13,700 feet or about 4,180 meters, suddenly exploded and broke apart in midair. The entire nose section and center fuselage separated, the nose plunging into the water, while the rest of the structure was quickly engulfed in flames, sending the shattered remains of fate hurtling toward the ocean. This breakup was not simply a loud explosion, it was a heart-stopping moment. The NTSB's reconstruction described the sequence. An explosion occurred inside the center wing fuel tank, causing the central fuselage to split away and immediately lose its structural balance. As a result, the nose section detached and fire erupted fiercely, spreading to the tail section. This was no ordinary accident. It was a violent mid-air catastrophe. As the debris rained down onto the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, the crash site turned into a chaotic scene. Two large fireballs plunged into the sea, sending smoke and plumes of spray high into the air. The following day, NOAA's survey ship Rude arrived on scene and quickly marked the area, beginning the search for wreckage and remains. The vessel deployed sonar scans to pinpoint the location of key pieces so that recovery divers could be dispatched. It wasn't just NOAA. Both the U.S. Coast Guard and Navy joined in an unprecedented operation, forming an immense network of support over both sea and sky. The tragedy grew even heavier when the confirmed numbers came in. All 230 people aboard had perished. The accident quickly became one of the most heartbreaking aviation disasters in U.S. history, leaving the entire nation stunned. There was a haunting paradox. A journey that began full of promise ended with a violent tear across the sky, where peace was broken without a single warning. In less than half an hour from takeoff, no one could have imagined that the fate of everyone on board would conclude in a mid-air explosion, followed by a free fall into the sea, where wreckage and secrets lay buried in the dark blue depths. And if we want to answer why the fuselage snapped in two, why the nose fell away first, and how the fire consumed the rest in mere seconds, we must look closely at the wreckage lying silently on the ocean floor. Those warped metal plates, charred marks, and fractures matching each section of the aircraft are the keys, the undeniable evidence painstakingly gathered by investigators over months after the disaster. So to continue unraveling this mystery, we will take you down to the ocean floor, where the wreckage tells the final story of TWA Flight 800, a place where the truth is as thick as oil floating in dark water, and where we hope to uncover the real cause behind the explosion in the sky, even if it makes viewers shiver but unable to turn away. At dawn the morning after the tragedy, one of the largest recovery operations in aviation history began. Rescue vessels combed the waters, equipped with sonar, winches, and nets, locating each small fragment scattered across the area, then carefully hauling up twisted pieces of metal, scorched electrical wiring, or sections of fuselage still bearing the marks of spreading fire. These fragments were color-coded: blue, yellow, red, based on their position at the breakpoints, then transported ashore to be reassembled like a massive jigsaw puzzle, enabling investigators to reconstruct the ill-fated flight. This was not simply the retrieval of bits of metal. It was the painstaking process of reclaiming a story that had been torn apart over the waters off Long Island. In a rented hangar in Calverton, New York, investigators began the complex task, piecing together the center section of the fuselage, slowly recreating the shattered frame of the 747. Here, they could study closely each patch of charred black, each uneven fracture, and the direction in which the metal had warped. From this, the first signs emerged clearly, like an unspoken testimony. The explosion had originated from the middle of the aircraft, specifically the center wing fuel tank. The wreckage didn't just say what had happened, it revealed where the explosion began, how it started, and how quickly it spread. This reconstruction was far from a mere puzzle game. It was a critical step. The fragments stood as living proof, the first grim confirmation that the disaster began at the heart of the aircraft. Slightly burned pieces, edges warped inward around the center wing tank, showed that an immense internal force had blasted outward, snapping the center fuselage in two and breaking it along the seam toward the nose section. In other words, the wreckage filled in half the story, the where and the how it began. However, the debris could only tell the location and the first step of the tragedy. The rest of the story, why an explosion could blow apart the center of a 747, why electrical wiring and fuel sensors showed unusual changes just minutes before, and what triggered the inferno in the sky, would be answered by the black box lying silent among the wreckage. Now, the physical reconstruction had drawn the map of space and time, but the black box, with its audio recordings and flight data, would tell the why in vivid, concrete detail, as if the aircraft itself were speaking its final words in that terrifying moment. There is no denying it. The recovery and reconstruction brought the first light to the mystery. Every clue, from twisted metal and suffocating burn marks to detached fragments, pointed the investigation toward the center of the aircraft, where the first explosion took place. But the full picture of the tragedy could only come into focus once the black box was read, its data on speed, altitude, valve positions, fire warnings, and the final sounds decoded. Physical wreckage and technical data together would reveal the complete secret, from the cause of the blast to how it spread so quickly that the Boeing 747 in mere seconds became nothing but debris scattered across the dark sky. And this is where the most suspenseful moment begins.
We just saw an explosion out here of 5507.
Opening the black box, listening to the final sounds of TWA Flight 800, and studying every piece of data that quietly releases the secret the aircraft has kept for nearly 3 decades. As the physical fragments from the mid-air explosion were brought ashore and the fuselage was gradually reconstructed, a seemingly silent black box, yet one holding the final account, became the focus of the investigation. It didn't take long for both recorders, the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, and the flight data recorder, FDR, to be successfully recovered, carrying with them the hope of unlocking the mystery of TWA Flight 800's doomed journey. But when the investigation began, the data from the black boxes revealed a stunning fact. The recording stopped abruptly just before the explosion, and no distress signal was ever transmitted from the sealed cockpit in those fleeting moments between life and death. This silence alone sparked a wave of speculation and 3 main lines of explanation that investigators, the media, and the public debated intensely. Some believed it was the signature of a bomb planted on the aircraft. Others argued that TWA 800 had been struck by a missile. And still others theorized that it was simply an internal technical failure, such as an electrical short that ignited the fuel. These theories were far from surprising, especially in the context of mid-1990s America, a period highly sensitive to terrorism and the threat of bomb attacks. However, not long after, a series of thorough scientific analyses gradually ruled out the bomb and missile hypotheses. The NTSB confirmed that no characteristic traces of explosives or missile warhead fragments were found on the debris. Traces of explosive compounds like RDX and PETN discovered on some wreckage were later explained as likely contamination from prior service, such as explosives detection training, military operations, or post-accident handling, rather than evidence of a bomb aboard when the aircraft took off. At the same time, the fact that radar detected no missile trail, combined with the sequence of debris separation and metal structure fractures caused by internal pressure, clearly pointed to the origin of the disaster being inside the center of the fuselage. If there was an explosion, it had burst outward from the middle, not from an external projectile or bomb fragment. The leading theory now receiving the most support was that the blast was triggered internally, right inside the center wing fuel tank. The NTSB determined that the most probable cause was a spark from faulty electrical wiring, possibly from the Fuel Quantity Indication System, FQIS, which inadvertently ignited a flammable mix of fuel vapor and air inside the tank. There was no warning alarm, no final mayday call, only a chilling silence just before the aircraft split in two and plunged irreversibly into darkness. So, if it wasn't a bomb or a missile, what inside could create such a violent, fiery explosion at 13,700 feet in the air? The answer lay not only in the wreckage and burn marks outside, but also in the final numbers, sounds, and data stored in the black boxes. At this point, uncovering the true root cause of the blast was no longer just a news story. It became the aircraft's own act of speaking its last words, with the answer hidden in the final cockpit sounds, the speed, temperature, and warning readings that would lift the veil on TWA Flight 800's greatest mystery. Right after the story of the mid-air explosion began to unfold, the NTSB gradually presented a clear answer. The primary cause was a fuel vapor explosion inside the center wing tank, CWT. In reality, although the tank appeared nearly empty, it still contained about 50 gallons of fuel, enough to create a flammable mixture if ignited. On that night at JFK Airport, under the sweltering summer sky, the air conditioning units located beneath the fuel tank had been running continuously, raising the tank's temperature to a level where the fuel-air mixture became highly combustible. Once the temperature was high enough, even the smallest electrical spark, such as from aging wiring or the Fuel Quantity Indication System, FQIS, could ignite the entire contents. But the strange question remained. Why did so many eyewitnesses see a streak of light shooting up into the sky, as if some object had been launched like a missile? The truth lay not in any rocket or projectile, but in the chaos of the moment the aircraft tore apart. When the fuel mixture erupted into an intense fireball, from the perspective and movement of observers on the ground, the flames and falling debris created an elongated streak of light that appeared to rise into the air, leading many to believe they had seen something launched upward, when in fact it was burning fuel cascading downward. Ultimately, after more than 4 grueling years of investigation, the NTSB released its conclusion. The explosion originated from fuel vapors in the center wing tank, triggered by a small electrical spark from faulty wiring, possibly linked to the FQIS. Although the exact origin point of the spark could not be pinpointed, this explanation best fit the burn patterns, debris field, and black box data. Even with this clear conclusion, public debate refused to fade. Many doubted that such a massive explosion could be explained so simply. Some still clung to the missile or bomb scenario, fueled by the streak of light imagery and the uneasy accounts of eyewitnesses. Others suspected that the truth had been suppressed, emphasizing that while radar showed no missile, the human perception of that night suggested otherwise, keeping the unease alive beyond the reach of data and reports. So, what is it that leaves the public unsatisfied with the technical verdict? Could it be the silence in the moments before the disaster, the bizarre streak of light, and the countless unanswered questions that keep curiosity burning? And in the face of that darkness, could there still be something deeper hidden, something the aircraft never had the chance to tell? When the black box is analyzed in detail, when the final sounds are heard, and when the flight's data is reconstructed moment by moment, only then can we see whether there is yet another layer of mystery we have not uncovered. More than 2 decades after the devastating explosion of TWA Flight 800, the greatest legacy left by the tragedy is the fundamental changes it brought to aviation safety standards. Following the release of the official investigation report, the U.S. aviation industry implemented a series of technical measures to minimize the risk of fuel tank fires and explosions. Electrical systems related to fuel level measurement were inspected and upgraded with stricter protocols, old wiring was replaced, and new isolation and spark prevention devices were added. One notable improvement was the adoption of inerting the fuel tanks, pumping inert gases such as nitrogen into the empty spaces to prevent the fuel vapor air mixture from reaching flammable levels. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, these changes have become mandatory standards for many commercial aircraft models, significantly reducing the likelihood of a similar catastrophe in the future. Beyond the technical side, TWA Flight 800 left behind a powerful emotional legacy. The near-complete reconstruction of the Boeing 747 center fuselage, pieced together from tens of thousands of fragments recovered from the ocean floor, was displayed and preserved for nearly 2 decades at the NTSB's facility. It was not only an investigative tool, but also a symbol of patience, meticulousness, and the power of science in the pursuit of truth. Every scorch mark, every warped piece of metal was part of the story, a reminder that behind the numbers and technical conclusions were 230 human lives lost forever. Yet, even with science providing an answer, the public's questions have never truly faded. Do you believe the streak of light that night was merely an optical illusion from flames and falling debris, or was it evidence of something the official report did not reveal? And in a world where surveillance technology continues to advance, is it time to install cockpit cameras on every flight to put an end to speculation from the very start, rather than allowing doubts to linger for decades? Share your thoughts in the comments, pass this story on to those who care, and don't forget to subscribe to MindGap so we can continue uncovering the mysteries that await us.